bring in now lawyer Martin Kpebu, who's been paying close attention to happenings in the last hour or so. Lawyer, thank you so much for your time here this afternoon. But I'll pick your initial thoughts on this matter as well. Some of the issues she's raised, again, I'll reiterate that we know, but she went in depth in some others. What are your thoughts about what you heard from her today?
So, Kennedy, I'm sorry to disappoint viewers and listeners. You see, the law currently, Article 146, Clause 8, says that the proceedings should be held in camera. And so that means that we don't see what's happening. And then there's been a Supreme Court decision that we should not discuss the merits of the petitions, etc., while the case is pending. They even said the petitioner can only disclose to the media that, well, I filed a petition against so and so and so, but the petitioner shouldn't go into the details. So, unfortunately, I have to obey those rules in order not to, fall foul of the law. So we can't go into the details. You see, what Justice Torkonuu is done. Yes, a few weeks ago, I think, Kemini, fortunately, that week you moderated, or let's say you were the host of the key points that Saturday, where we have to discuss the matter of her waiver of her right to the in-camera hearing, where she said she wanted the proceedings to be broadcast. But when we finish, at the end of the day, it is clear that majority of lawyers and the majority of our society came to the conclusion that, look, 146 is clear. When they say in-camera hearing, and also based on the Frank Agyapong case and the Justice Derrick case, we should not go into the merits. The proceedings should not be broadcast live. So because of that, I cannot. I was supporting Chief Justice Torkonuu that, yes, we should. But mine was that we should first do a survey of Ghanaians. If we did a general poll and an overwhelming majority of Ghanaians said yes, then sometimes we could do so because the Constitution is made for us and not man for the Constitution. I see. Blah blah blah. So
lawyer, it is not true when the suspended Chief Justice tells us that secrecy of removal of justices has no place in the Constitution.
Sorry, say that again.
I'm saying that. So it is not true when she tells us that secrecy around the removal of justices is not in the Constitution or has no place in the Constitution.
Oh, is that how she put it? I didn't hear that side of it. But one thing is very clear. I joined, I don't know how many minutes I've lost, but the part I heard, that one didn't deal with that. But let's be very clear, Kemini. Article 146, Clause 8 says that the proceedings should be held in camera. And even apart from 146, okay, I'll read it, but we'll go to the Frank Agyapong case and then the, the Justice Derrick cases, which dealt with publication. The Justice Derrick cases, the Anas one, where the Anas documentary was broadcast and people saw it. The Supreme Court was very clear that that should not be done. So let's go over 146 Clause 8. It says that all proceedings under this article shall be held in camera, and the justice or chairman against whom the petition is made is entitled to be heard, blah, blah, blah. So the main thing, you heard the main thing, it says shall be held in camera. And apart from that, as I mentioned earlier, there's a Frank Agyapong case where the Supreme Court held that, no, when a petition is made, the petitioner should only mention to the media that I have petitioned against so and so and so. Don't go into the content. So it's also true that though in this Chief Justice Torkonuu one, the contents were leaked. The petitions were leaked some weeks ago. We have read, but we cannot comment publicly. One thing is very clear, like I said, the chairman of the Constitution Review Commission, Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh, is in favor of making certain parts of the proceedings public that citizens should know. Right. But that's for the future, not in our current constitution. So for our current constitution, it's a closed book. Secret or in-camera hearing is in-camera hearing. But what Justice Torkonuu is doing is advocacy. paving the way for future public broadcasts, for future further disclosure of such proceedings. That's how the law is built.
I see.
So
in other words, she should have been allowing the process to just, take its course against her while we prepare for a better process with an amendment of the Constitution, because she raises concerns about that as well.
Second guessing a person who is going through such a trial is a very tricky one. So what is very clear is that currently we are not allowed to do what she did. But she's doing so, as I said, what she's experiencing, you and I don't know. So I'll be very slow to second guess her. But what is clear is that no, we can't go into the merits now. That one is very clear.
I see. I seem to be rushing you because in 5 minutes we should go to the presidency. We understand that the Minister for Government Communications will be responding to the Chief Justice's news conference in the last hour. But some of the things that she's mentioned, and Láwyer, for the first time, we're hearing her respond directly to the public on some of the allegations, if not all of the allegations in those petitions against her. So let's take the one by Daniel Ofori on impressed, because she talks about, her traveling with a family member, interchanging that every now and then with spouse. She says that based on her appointment letter, she is allowed to travel with a spouse, with a family member. It's unclear which one it is because she used them interchangeably. I want to hear from you, from your knowledge of the system. Is that the case?
Well, so let's say it's her defense. So once again, I'll talk about only the document I have seen, but I'm not answering directly that she has a case or not such a case. What I have seen, the policy that I have seen, shows that when the Chief Justice is on a private visit, then that one, her security detail must be with her. And then when it's an official trip, that one, it can be any other person. At least the last time I read it, that was clear to me. When it's a private visit, it must be a security detail with her. And when it is an official one, it can be any other person. That's either the security detail or a family relation. That's what I mean. Well, if I hazard the guess, it means that when it is an official trip, it is clear that usually on the official trip, they provide security. So maybe the need for extra security is less. But when it is a private visit, when she's going, they are not providing as much security as will be required. So that's why that one, there's a need for her official security to be on the trip.
I see, Láwyer. I just want to read aspects of this document that stipulates, her personal travels and other official travels of justices of the Supreme Court. Now, on point 1 on personal travel, it says that the Chief Justice shall be entitled to 2 round-trip business class tickets, Accra, London, Accra, to be utilized during his or her vacation. Travel expenses, hotel accommodation, and per diem will be borne by the Judicial Service and capped at 14 days per round trip. On point 2, it says, where the Chief Justice embarks on a personal or private travel, he or she shall be accompanied by the security alone. And the travel expenses of the security, comprising air ticket, hotel accommodation, and per diem, shall be borne by the Judicial Service. And official travel, right, which is point C in this Judicial Service document, says that as per the recommendations of the Professor Dora Francisca Edu Buando Presidential Committee on Emoluments for Article 71 Office Holders 2013-2017, as it affects justices of the Supreme Court of Judicature, justices of the Supreme Court and Court of Appeals shall travel business class and shall be accommodated in a 4-star hotel. Justices of the High Court shall travel economy class and be provided with accommodation. And it goes on and on. But the reason I'm reading is because it doesn't state clearly, all right, the familial relations supposed to travel with the occupant of the Chief Justice seat. And where I exit on this is whether or not that appointment letter that was given her will supersede the regulations of the Judicial Service.
Well, so number one, so you see, let's be clear. Where you read, you saw that when it's a private visit, it says that must be accompanied by security detail. The security detail, is that not so?
Yes.
So that is the interpretation. The way we interpret it in law is that on the private visit, it's been clear that must be accompanied by the security detail. So when it comes to the official one and it doesn't mention that must be accompanied by the official detail, that's how come by practice, if it's not the official, generally the person goes with the family, a family member. That is it. Because so the rule we use is that where the lawmaker wants to prohibit something, the lawmaker states it clearly. So you see on the private visit, the lawmaker says that go with the security. But when it comes to the official trip, it doesn't say that it must be limited to the security. Unless I didn't hear you well. Can you read the official one again?
On official travels by the Chief Justice, point 10, it says, where the Chief Justice is accompanied by the spouse or other person, he or she shall travel on the same class of air tickets as the Chief Justice and shall be paid the equivalent of half the per diem paid to the Chief Justice. On point 9, it says that the Chief Justice shall undertake unlimited official travels with either his or her spouse or other person of his or her choice in the year.
Exactly. So you see, when it is official, it's a his or a spouse or you see. So when it is official, you see that it says that spouse. Is that not what you read out?
Absolutely. Her spouse or other person.
So other person includes the daughter or the security. Any other person. That is official. So that is what I summarized for you before you read. But when it comes to the private visit, it says security, simple, full stop. There's no ambiguity.
Indeed. Lawyer, hang in there for us. Like I said, this is our live coverage of the Chief Justice Gertrude Torkonuu speaking to the Ghanaian people. In a bit, we should head for the presidency, where we are expecting the Minister for Government Communication to address the press there as well, and by extension, the nation. But Alfred is here with me, Lawyer Kweku. Alfred, Lawyer Kweku was also touched on areas of interest for him as far as this is concerned, and that has been the issue around imprints that were, captured in Daniel Ofori's petition to the president. She stated clearly, look, I am allowed to do this, and that is why I did. We've read aspects of the law and the regulation from the Judicial Service that allows her to do that on official travels. The question will be whether or not the committee will determine if the travel was indeed official or personal. But she mentioned during the news conference that she had gone on vacation because the Ghanaian people were gracious enough to pay for the vacation. I mean, did she give herself away? I'm not saying anything yet.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying anything yet.
But that detail also has generated a lot, especially she talks about the retiring of the accountable impress 2 days.
Indeed. After
she returned, and that she spent $4,400 out of the $14,000 that was given to her.
Absolutely.
That's some detail that we didn't know until today.
Right?
But then again, as to whether that detail she's giving today is going to play to her favor or not, it's one question that remains unanswered. Because as Lawyer Martin Kpebu indicated, he doesn't want to follow on the path of the Chief Justice by getting into the merits of this case,
the matter,
and then the details of this petition, and then now discussing the details in public, as the Chief Justice has done now. As to whether she's lent herself now for the public scrutiny that she was seeking to avoid, because she says she's not going to resign to make anyone's burden lighter.
Right.
She wants to go the full haul of this particular case. And so, as a result, she would rather let the public know, In fact, she had 4 reasons why she did this today. In her view, that the removal process was historic, it's never happened. And so the manner in which it's being done, in her view, breaks every rule on how justices should be removed or justice should be delivered. The second point, that though she's in the process alone, the effect for far reaches beyond her. And so she would want everybody to be carried along every step of the way. And then also, in order to address the violations of the constitutional illegality regarding the entire process. This is what was captured in one of the reliefs that she was seeking in this interlocutory injunction. And take a look at this. You recall that it became a matter of conversation as to whether this hearing, although the Constitution says should be in camera, can be waived by the request of the Chief Justice. And the lawyers who commented on this indicated that it is not within her right, to, as it were, vary what the constitutional provision really says. She was seeking a declaration that upon a true and proper interpretation of the same articles, the right of a Chief Justice to a public hearing and all the incidents of a fair hearing may only be excluded in the interest of public morality, public safety, or public order. And as a result, she wanted this to be telecast so we can all see it. She didn't succeed in that manner. And counsel, if Lawyer Martin Gbebo is there with us, counsel, are you still there with us? Hello, lawyer. We will try to get yes, counsel. I was saying that even though you don't want to go on the path of discussing the merits of this case as the Chief Justice has put out today, how do you envisage this ending? Is it going to play in her favor, what she has done now to, as it were, put out this in the court of public opinion, because she says that this matter has been discussed already in the court of public opinion? The details of the petition is out there, so she would rather let her opinion also be heard beyond what she said before the committee hearing this case.
So I didn't hear the first part of the question. So you say, what's my opinion of how it will
I was asking how you see things playing out for her. Is it going to end well for her and kneel to her favor, what she has done now to put this matter out in the court of public opinion, her view, her position on the petitions against her beyond what she said before the committee, which we all didn't hear until today?
Oh, yes. So, you see, it's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag, all right? But certainly, overall, I think she gets a bit of, what do you call it? A bit of good, all right? Overall, though it's a mixed bag, overall, she gets a bit of good press. Do you know what happens? Where she gets the good press is that one thing is clear that, look, even though we all agree that we must keep the public purse, all right, protect the public purse, etc., generally, when it comes to the money involved, the tickets especially, you would see that generally these are not large sums. So she will get sympathy, especially from a lot of people who have abused the public purse. You know, lots of public servants have abused the public purse. Lots of public servants have traveled, all right, business class, etc. You know, even the last time the president now had to give an order that ministers should not travel first class, right? And also, did they say even business class? You know, President Mahama gave a directive that there should be no first class. Then people said, nowadays, very few airlines even have first class. Then there was the question whether business class is covered. Let's dig that document and you see. But one thing that's very clear that you may not get many people contesting is that by talking openly about the money, what she brings to the fore is that definitely these are small sums. Me, I'm not going into the merits. I'm not discussing. This is what she has said. I'm not referring to any petition. These are things that she's referred to. So she's trying indirectly to cut the sympathies of many thousands of Ghanaians who have abused the public purse. So when you have, let's say, whoever is listening and has abused the public purse, let's say, in any manner, will now be wondering that, hey, Charlie, I mean, this could have happened to me, oh, and many have gotten away with it. So, you know that Bible saying that let he who is without sin be the first to cast the stone. And I'm telling you that people who have abused the public purse on first class tickets, etc., you know, will have sympathies because then they are careful that, but this thing which we've done, Charlie, in the past, hey, somebody is answering for it, etc. So that side, she's cutting some favor. As I said, that is what she has said. I have not referred to any petition. I have not talked about any petition. I'm just basing this on what she has said.
Because you're very careful in not getting into the details of this petition, would you say that to the extent that the Constitution is very clear on this process being in camera, but the person who is at the center of this entire process deciding to come out publicly to talk about it, is this act of the press conference and getting into the details of this petition contemptuous from what you said?
Yes. It is clear from J2, right, that and the Justice Dairy matter. The Supreme Court has been clear that we shouldn't discuss the merits and the contents of the petitions. Yes, that we shouldn't discuss those. The Supreme Court has been very clear. So we are not to discuss the merits and the contents of the petitions, right? So that much is very clear that what Justice Torkonuu is reading are really from the petitions. Then that's the Supreme Court has frowned on that. Yeah.
No,
yes.
So
in a number of cases,
she's in clear contempt of the process.
Now, in law, we don't mention that this is in clear contempt. So just like the way we say a person is innocent until proven guilty. So it's only when it goes to court and then the court has gone into it and come to a decision, then that's when you'll be very assertive. So maybe you say it appears this is in contempt or this may be. Yes, because once the person has not yet been found liable, we don't run ahead because the person has a right to innocence and to proving guilty.
Okay. Now she had doubts about whether or not the details of the petition given to her by the president is the same as was given to the committee hearing the petitions against her. Will this doubt have any foundation of merit, essentially? Can it be the case ever that the president would give her different details of petitions against her and the committee hearing the petitions would have different sets of petitions?
No, it's not likely. The president would not intentionally do so. No. It's not likely that will be done. Yeah.
I see. Counsel, I just want to piggyback off the issue of contempt, right? While we cannot state clearly as of now if she is indeed in contempt of the committee and the work that they are doing, what will her being in contempt of the committee mean for her and the entire process?
Let's further clarify. The committee is not a court of law, all right? So it's not in contempt of the committee. And let's be very clear. What you're saying is that it's rather a violation of the rules as mentioned in Article 146, Clause 8, and as clarified by the Supreme Court in the Justice Dairy matter. So, yes, I think when I was answering to Mr. Okanse, I missed that. So, Mr. Okanse, actually, to the extent that the committee is not a court of law, we cannot say that it's in contempt of the committee. Yes, we can't say so. But
you know, we could say that she's in violation of the rules.
Yes, it's a violation of Article 146. This is clause 8, and also as further explained and clarified by the Supreme Court in the Frank Ejechu case, and also in the what do you call it? In the Derry case, the Justice Paul Derry case. So what the Supreme Court said was that in the Justice Derry case, then they say yes, you may file.
Very well.
You may file that this is a violation. And then they also even mentioned that in that case, the rules of court should also come out specifically. They should make more clearer rules.
I see.
Right? On the punishment, what would be done to such persons. Yes.
Who violates the regulations. But counsel, how about you hang in there for me? Because I do want to talk about the issue she raised on Shining Stars. She said this group does not even exist, but the presidency accepted their petition. And I want to find out from you, I mean, the possibility of something as important as this falling through the cracks and what it means for the petition presented by the Shining Stars people, whether or not it could even be taken seriously at all, if indeed it is true that this group does not exist. But also more importantly, really, after she has done this, can and should the process continue? I'll come back to you with that. Let's head for the presidency now. If you've been watching us since the beginning of our coverage, you may have heard me say at some point that we'll go to the presidency, where we expect the Minister for Government Communications to address the press and by extension the nation on, we suspect it will be on some of the things that we have heard so far from the suspended Chief Justice. But how about we go and learn actually what it could be about? Our presidential affairs correspondent, Komla Kluche, joining us live from the Jubilee House. Komla, talk to us. What will this news conference be about? Do you know yet?
Well, it's quite clear. It's a direct response to the suspended Chief Justice Gertrude Torkonuu. She made some specific allegations against the government regarding the process that she's going through now. Most especially to the effect that she alleges that it's been skewed against her and it's been unfair. She's received threats even on her life and all that. Government deems it necessary to respond to some of the specific allegations where she claims that the government is orchestrating this just to oust her. And so the spokesperson for government communication, Felix Kwaku Annan, is getting ready in the next minute or so thereabout to come and address the press on this. This, I must say, has gotten the attention of the government, and they feel that there's the need for them to respond to the claims being made by the embattled Chief Justice. All of this is to the effect that some of the claims that she has made are untrue, and that at every material time they've been very fair to her, given an opportunity to respond to the petitions, and also to the effect that the time of the responses given to her and all that will be at play. And so it's a more reason why the government deems it very necessary that they will take responses from her. They will give responses to the claims that she's made.
This engagement that her leadership, the Chief Justice, just had, which bordered on the petitions brought against her and the deliberations of the committee tasked to look into the matter. Ordinarily, if the matters were left to the content of the petition and the processes being undertaken by the committee, we will not have cause to comment, because those are matters beyond the view of the president or the government. But a number of things were said at the media engagement that, if left uncorrected, could create an erroneous impression and project government in a very unfair, unjust, unwarranted light. To begin with, we respect the right of Her Ladyship, the Chief Justice, to express any view that she holds about the matter in question, to the extent that it is consistent with the rules, because the Constitution makes it clear what the processes are in determining a matter of the sort that we are engaged with. The Constitution requires confidentiality on the part of all parties. It is a reason why the presidency, on behalf of His Excellency the President, has refrained from commentary on the matter beyond stating what the President has done in compliance with the Constitution. So it would have been desirable that that constitutional provision was respected by Her Ladyship the Chief Justice, so that we do not have to engage in public commentary up until the time that the committee looking into the matter makes their determination. We are compelled, however, to correct certain misimpressions that were created at the briefing. To begin with, let me point out that as yet, nobody has been able to ascribe any known verifiable constitutional breach to the President in the way that he has handled this particular matter. From the very first steps in this matter, the President has kept fidelity to the Constitution and has respected the spirit and letter of the Constitution. Everything he has done has been by the book. That is why all those who have commented on the matter, including Her Ladyship the Chief Justice, have been unable to point to any specific provision under Article 146 that the President has been in breach of. Second, in terms of confidentiality, the President has acted strictly in accordance with the Constitution. At no point in time has the Presidency put out anything in any way, shape, or form that remotely resembles any of the contents of the petition. And the only communication that has gone out on this matter have been about the steps that the President has taken in accordance with the 1992 Constitution, Article 146 to be precise. 3, Her Ladyship the Chief Justice all but insinuated that there was some political agenda at play to oust her, and that this whole process is a result of same. Let me place on record, without fear of contradiction, and let me be clear that no such political agenda exists. His Excellency the President took an oath to which he was incidentally sworn by Her Ladyship the Chief Justice herself. And in that oath, he swore to abide by the 1992 Constitution. He is enjoined to act a particular way when he receives petitions of the sort that he has received. And that is all that His Excellency has done. He has had no choice in the matter. The President cannot say that he has a view about how things should be done, and therefore, if petitions have come, he will fail to act. If he did that, he himself would be in breach of the Constitution, and therefore, he has been enjoined to act as any responsible leader or President of the Republic of Ghana would be required to do, as stipulated by the 1992 Constitution. The fourth point is also that we cannot have a sacred cow mentality in the way that we handle state affairs. Every single public official, from the President to the Speaker to the Chief Justice to Supreme Court judges to ministers to all public office holders, are bound by the provisions of Ghanaian law. Indeed, it was the former Australian Prime Minister, Kevin Rudd, who once said that when you join the game, you play by the rules. So no public official is allowed to raise him or herself above the laws of Ghana. It does not matter how sensitive your position is. Once Ghanaian law dictates that certain processes be undertaken in respect of some alleged misconduct, the rules must come to play. And that is the only guiding principle that President Mahama has operated by in all of this. So any claim, any inference, any innuendo, any imputation of a political motive to the president in respect of these processes are unfounded, they are false, and cannot be allowed to stand. And I wish to place that on record. As yet, absolutely no evidence of same has been furnished in any way, shape, or form. And therefore, I am minded to strongly reject that effort. Unfortunately, Her Ladyship, the Chief Justice herself, has added to this commentary, which initially was the tone of elements of the opposition. And it is deeply regrettable that this should happen when the president has been above board and conducted himself in strict compliance with the Constitution of Ghana. The other point that I wish to also place on record is that the attempts to link the dastardly killings of some Supreme Court judges and a military officer to this case are most disingenuous. To begin with, this government and President Mahama have nothing to do with the killing of any judge. Second, there's absolutely no nexus between the petitions that have been brought and that unfortunate incident in our past. So any effort to link the two is regrettable and should not find space in this sort of discourse. It is most undesirable, it is most unacceptable. Now, the venue in question is the Edu Lodge. Yes, it is close to the Osu Castle, which used to be the former seat of government. As I speak, there are government agencies that operate there. So it is a public place. The Osu Castle is a public place. You can go there to conduct official government business. Beside it are private residences owned by Ghanaians who move freely in and out of their residence, even though they are situated very close to the Osu Castle. So the impression that a facility in the vicinity of the Osu Castle necessarily makes it intimidating or foreboding is completely misplaced. It is unfair. It is not justifiable. Now, Edu Lodge is a state facility which is often used to house high-ranking officials who visit the Republic of Ghana. It belongs to the state. The decision to use that place was not that of government or President Mahama. The committee requested that they needed facilities of a certain status that could house their activities and that could facilitate a smooth running of the proceedings. And that facility was available. It is equipped with modern amenities that will facilitate the work of the committee. And the state only offered it upon the request of the committee. Let me also state that that facility is not intimidating. It is like any regular state facility where business can be conducted to the extent that it is put in the right shape. Wherever these proceedings were held, it will still be in camera, as clearly stipulated in Article 1468 of the 1992 Constitution. So that the proceedings are being held in camera is only in compliance with the Constitution. So it doesn't matter where it is held. And any security measure put in place is only intended to secure the place so that persons who are not authorized to be part of the proceedings do not come there and create any inconvenience. I believe that even if the hearings were held at the court premises, it will still be under significant security controls to ensure that only authorized persons have access to the place. So to describe Edu Lodge in the terms that Her Ladyship, the Chief Justice, did was most unfair and unjustifiable. It seeks to obscure the process and bring in unrelated matters that seek to cast some aspersion or ill motives on government for affording the committee a place to do its work. As I indicated, we have no interest in violating the Constitution by going into the merits of the case. And that is why government has refrained. Let me put it on record that government itself has had cause, indeed the president himself had cause, to lament the way in which some correspondence around this matter got into the media. You will recall that the very first sign of any leakage was the letter that the Chief Justice wrote requesting for copies of the petition. Before the letter got to the presidency, it was in the media. And you recall that in the president's response, in which he also took the opportunity to forward the petition to her, we raised that issue, that it was not acceptable. Indeed, we had cause, the president had cause then to ask his executive secretary to mark the documents that were being sent to the Chief Justice in order to guard against any leakage. So at no point has anybody leaked anything. Also, it must be noted that even the media houses that first broadcast the content of these petitions were media houses that you can say are aligned to the opposition. And they are the ones who have gone to town with this sort of thing. So to attempt to cast aspersions on the presidency is most unfortunate, and it causes what should be a smooth process leading to the determination of the merit or otherwise of the petitions that have been brought. So in summary, I would say that as the President Mahama is committed to upholding the rule of law. We cannot have a situation where, depending on who is involved, the Constitution is set aside. All Ghanaians are equal before the law, in the same way that our courts have dealt with individuals in accordance to law. If members of the judiciary themselves are alleged to be engaged in some wrongdoing, the processes laid down and spelled out by the Constitution ought to be respected. And that is exactly what has happened. I thank you very much.
Thanks for watching. Like and share the video. You can also drop your comment. Please don't forget to subscribe. Click on the bell to turn on the notification.